K-Man Daily Weather is presented by Fox Business Systems. How much does downtime cost you and your business? Don't let another second go by. Call Fox Business Systems at 776-1452.
Your News Radio KMAN Manhattan area forecast, currently -5 outside. Today we'll see increasing clouds, that high floating around 13. Then tonight, mostly cloudy, not as cold, -1 for the low. Then Friday, a chance of flurries, otherwise mostly sunny. High around 21. Then Friday night, mostly clear, a low around 9 heading into Saturday. Back to sunny skies and a high around 41. It's time for Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Digging deeper into the conversations, trends, and ideas impacting Manhattan and the Flint Hills. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
If I am an entrepreneur, I may have what I consider to be the most unique idea ever considered since man walked upright on the planet. Why, my idea will turn into a business that will not only serve humanity, but make me rich. But what if I have vision but lack risk tolerance? What if I am resourceful but I don't know how to deal with people or systems that can help me succeed? Here in the Sunflower State, there is a place I can go to fill those gaps. It is called Network Kansas, and our guest today is its CEO, Steve Radley. My name is Mike Matson. I'm a former journalist, a one-time political operative and lobbyist. I am your host for Within Reason. Depending upon how you listen to us, we are either a live radio show that will become a digital podcast, or we're a digital podcast that originated as a live radio show. We basically like to meet you where you are. Either way, our aim is to serve as a vehicle to spur critical thinking by engaging in conversations with individuals that are involved in community, regional, and statewide issues, topics, and concerns. Within Reason is presented by Stormont Vale Health, McCown Gordon Construction, and the Trust Company. We're live on News Radio KMAN. We're live streaming on YouTube. You can go to that website, search News Radio KMAN, and there you will find our smiling faces. Steve is smiling. I am not, but that'll change as we go on. I'm confident. We're also being recorded and will be posted as a podcast on the KMAN website and made available on places like Spotify and Apple. Steve Radley is our guest. Welcome to Within Reason.
Thanks, Mike. I'm looking forward to having this discussion today.
We should point out that Steve and I go way back. We met in 2008 when Steve and I were both part of a guinea pig cohort for the Kansas Leadership Center when they were test driving their curriculum.
Yes, and it was a wonderful experience working with Ed O'Malley and that whole group.
I want to say we spent a week at a church camp in Heston. Is that,
yep,
is my
exactly
memory serving me
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
What I remember,
sequestered.
That's right. They wouldn't let us away.
Yeah, last time they did that too. I think.
And we
probably
learned,
because of us.
And no doubt that's true. The Kansas Leadership Center clearly connected to the Kansas Health Foundation. Their whole notion is to help build capacity in individuals doing the kind of work that you do, and I know you've been involved with them as well. Before we get get off of memory lane, Steve, let's let our listeners understand a little bit more about who you are. Who in the world is Steve Radley?
Well, I'm a father and a guy who loves Kansas, been in Kansas a long time, but I'm also, in my younger days, I have a BA in journalism, which we share, moved to L.A., was going to be a screenwriter and had an agent for my screenplay, and then just decided that life was not for me and moved back to Kansas and got my MBA and started working in entrepreneurship and working with my father was an entrepreneur his whole life. My brother's still an entrepreneur. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur anymore, but we have grown Network Kansas quite a bit too.
Tell us about Network Kansas. What is it?
So Network Kansas was created by statute in 2004. I was hired in May of 2005 to kind of get it off the ground. And the whole concept behind Network Kansas was there are people who want to start businesses, and there are resources available to them, but for whatever reason they don't get connected to those resources.
And so it started as a policy idea in the state legislature, correct?
Yes, it did.
I think the legislature was looking at ways to basically create job growth, economic development.
Yes. It started that way, and one of my old bosses at Commerce, Patty Clark, used to say, read the statute, read the statute, read the statute.
Fair enough. We'll talk about the politics and all the policy and how all that came about as we move forward. But Steve, you started your career. You'd mentioned the screenwriter stuff. You came back though, and you were what I would describe as an entrepreneur in terms of my opening monologue, the kind of things that you wanted to do to start businesses. Tell us about that experience.
Yes. Well, the first place after I got my MBA, went to work for a technology company in Wichita, Kansas, believe it or not. We launched the first prepaid wireless service in the country with AT&T, and we launched the first voice-activated dialing system. And then as we grew from about $6 million to $200 million, and the company began to look at moving out of Kansas. And so I wanted to stay in Kansas, and so the best way to do that was through entrepreneurship. And so Eric Peterson, who works for Network Kansas, and I started a manufactured housing dealership in Wichita.
When you were doing that, when you were working in those systems, creating those businesses, did you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you get up in the morning and say, I'm going to do entrepreneurial things?
I think that the problem is that people don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs. What I tell people is if you pulled out your own personal checkbook, wrote a check, put it in a bank, and start paying yourself to start a business, you're an entrepreneur. And I think that a lot of small businesses don't consider themselves entrepreneurs, but they are entrepreneurs. If you're surviving through your own ingenuity, you're an entrepreneur.
Help us understand. You hear the word a lot, especially when you start to have the conversation in a community about economic development. There's always a broad sort of private sector job growth conversation, and then subsets of that conversation. Entrepreneurialism is always one of them. Is it easy to define, right, when you think of individuals who do this?
No, it's not. And I look at it in a very the way I look at it is there is a science to entrepreneurship or starting your own business, and there is an art to it. And so if you take two different people and go through that process, starting a business, there's a science to it. You have to have a business plan. You have to figure out where you're going to go. You have to figure out your market. All of those things, that's a science. The art to it, though, is where you find out who's going to be successful. And that, I think, is the art piece, is why some are successful and some aren't. And so there's this piece to owning your own business that might be related to you, and it might be related to just external circumstances.
That's a great point, and it sort of it brings home the point I tried to make in the very opening component, right? You may have a certain set of skills, but you might have gaps in other things. You might think of yourself as a really good entrepreneurial scientist, as you describe it. I can get from point A to point B, but I lack the artistic skills that are going to be needed. Network Kansas tries to fill in all of those gaps, correct?
Yes. And I think that I was laughing at your intro because entrepreneurs think that, and the first thing I want to tell them is there is no new idea.
Right.
There's a way to execute that's different, and that's how you make money.
Fair enough. Our guest is Steve Radley. He is the Chief Executive Officer of a system known as Network Kansas. It involves all manner of opportunities for those who describe themselves as entrepreneurs and maybe those who don't describe themselves as entrepreneurs. He works across the state. We'll talk with Steve as we progress here about what that work looks like, about how that individuals involved in the work can access the resources that are involved with it. They describe themselves as a premier statewide network for helping entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses. Steve Radley leads the organization. We'll visit more with Steve as Within Reason continues here on News Radio KMAN. Stay with us.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Stormontvale Health is your go-to for exceptional care right in your own neighborhood.
The Flint Hills campus in Junction City is open 24/7 with a full-service hospital and rural health clinic. You'll find primary care and advanced lab services at our Wamego clinic to keep your family healthy without the drive. Our Manhattan campus offers a wide range of primary and specialty providers, plus imaging and lab services, and a pick-me-up at Radina's inside our campus. Visit stormontvale.org.
Stormontvale Health. High-quality care closer to home.
Manhattan Broadcasting is keeping it local. Dollars spent locally today help build a better community for tomorrow.
From simple things like hail damage to complete restoration, Quality Collision will keep your car looking as good as the day you bought it. And they work with all major insurance companies. Quality Collision, where quality is more than their name. It's a promise to their customers.
Connect to anywhere in the world with 5 daily flights to Dallas and Chicago when you fly local with Manhattan Regional Airport. You'll spend less time driving, saving you gas and time. And more importantly, you'll get home quicker to the ones you love. Click your next flight at flymhk.com.
Love Potion 31 is back at Baskin-Robbins. White chocolate and raspberry flavored ice cream with raspberry-filled chocolate flavored hearts and raspberry swirls. Give your sweetheart this Love Potion and you will have their heart for good. Baskin-Robbins in downtown Manhattan. A Streeter family business. Our family serving yours.
Manhattan Broadcasting is keeping it local. Find more great local businesses plus special deals and offers when you keep it local on our website.
Suicide is often a silent struggle, but no one has to face it alone. If you or someone you love is feeling hopeless, remember, there is help and there is hope. Reaching out is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of courage. Together, we can turn pain into healing and despair into strength. Help is always available. Visit Pawnee Mental Health's Crisis Stabilization Unit at 1558 Hayes Drive or call our crisis hotline at 1-800-609-2002. Both available 24/7. You don't have to face this alone. Help is just a call away.
The 9th Annual Corporate Pinewood Derby returns Saturday, March 8th, 7 p.m. at Max Motors on Highway 24. Remember when you raced the Pinewood Derby? It's a fantastic adult team building event with a variety of sponsorship availabilities to race. If you want to just join us on the fun, $30 per person or $50 per couple. This includes refreshments and the live and silent auction. Come to the event for racing fun while supporting Scouting America Conza District. For more information, go to mymhk.com on the 9th Annual Corporate Pinewood Derby, Saturday, March 8th, 7 p.m. at Max Motors on East Highway 24. Support Scouting America Conza District.
The Ramsey Show.
Up to 50% of American families are paying their adult children's bills to an average of $1,482 a month. Wow. I've never seen it like this. 25% of millennials, their parents are paying their house payment, their rent, or they're living in their basement. You pay your kids' bills. Psychologists call that enabling. As a matter of fact, enabling is quite the opposite of loving.
Go from paycheck to purpose with The Ramsey Show. Weekdays 10 to 1 on News Radio, KMAN. KMAN's Morning News, tomorrow morning 6 to 9. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
We are back. Network Kansas is a statewide network of nonprofit business building resources that help entrepreneurs and small business owners start up and grow successful businesses. Steve Radley is its Chief Executive Officer and our guest today here on Within Reason. Steve, the work starts actually at the community level with you guys.
Yes. When we first started, we had to do two things. The first thing we did is build out this network of resources and have them become part of a network so that you can now call an 800 number or go to info@networkkansas.com to get information about what we do. Once we built that partner network out, though, we really, obviously the purpose was to work across the state, in particular in rural communities across the state. And so we developed a concept called the Entrepreneurship Community Partnership. And that partnership is really what we started with 6 communities in 2007. And we have 75 now across the state.
What's that work look like? How do you actually build those communities?
So it's the most awesome thing we do because when you talk about entrepreneurs, you're really empowering those communities. And so they're made up of leadership teams of anywhere from 7 to 15 people that are leaders in the community. And we work with them to develop their strategies on how they support entrepreneurs. Part of that strategy, though, also is gap financing, matching loans. So if a bank wants to do a deal, as you know, in rural communities, sometimes a business is working on a building, and when they're done, it's not worth what they want to put in it, but They still need that gap financing. So we can come in and provide capital. But the communities are the ones making the decisions.
We will talk about the financing and where the money comes from here as we progress. But let's continue on this line with respect to the community partnerships, right? So I'll make an assumption, and check me on the assumption, that once you get these leaders in a room and you share with them what you are trying to do, the rising tide will lift all those boats. Correct?
Yes, and I will tell you that. we're doing things, and the great thing is you learn something in one community, and you can take that and share it with other communities. One great example is Independence Community College developed a Fab Lab, and he called us and said, we should have other economic development directors come and learn this. So we would send economic development directors for a week in Independence. They'd go back and start their own Fab Labs to help entrepreneurs.
So at the core of the work is resources, right? And probably tops on that list is financial resources, yes. Right? You need to find a way to help these businesses get started. Where does the money come from?
Well, for us, it started with we're funded through an entrepreneurship tax credit, and we get a small stipend from the Kansas Department of Commerce. But we started by utilizing that money. However, what I've learned in the last 20 years of doing this is about once every decade, the federal government, there's some crisis, and the federal government has to provide capital. The Great Recession was one of the biggest ones, and so a lot of the financial resources we are working with right now are from the federal government, U.S. Department of Treasury, and they have really changed the game, and we've been able to create long-term funding.
Need to ask you, right? You read the newspaper the last 2 or 3 days. Is that money at risk for you all, or do you know yet?
So we're administering a program in partnership with Kansas Department of Commerce right now, and Kansas received $69 million, and we have $40 million allocated to matching loan programs and $27 to equity investment programs. You get them in tranches. Kansas is one of the top 10 across the country, and we've received 2 of the 3 tranches. Is that third tranche in jeopardy? Possibly.
Yeah, fair enough. But I'll make an assumption too that doesn't just happen because they like the color of your eyes, right? They do that because you have proven your worth.
Right. So when you we're doing 10 to 15 matching. Now these are matching loans, so that means we're just like we're like 15% of the capital most of the time. The rest of the money is coming from banks and other, mostly financial institutions across the state.
Which is the typical sort of best practice when it comes to this sort of work.
Exactly.
Steve Radley is our guest. He is the CEO of Network Kansas, and we're visiting with him about that system and all the good work they do in rural communities, in suburbs, in bedroom communities, in big cities across the state. Right now we're just talking about where the money comes from, and Steve is explaining to us that it is sort of a combination of all of that stuff. Give us a feel for the relationship you have with banks. That has to be a key component.
First of all, Kansas is really fortunate. We have 3 of the largest family-owned banks in the country, and they're in the top 35. They didn't sell out to Bank of America's of the world and places like that. And we have a lot of community banks that are family-owned banks and it's critical. I was in Oregon doing some work in Oregon, believe it or not. And
I do believe
couldn't
it,
find
you.
I couldn't find it. Community banks. It was Chase Manhattan, and so I realized our banking system and working with the Kansas Bankers Association is really critical to small business across the state.
Well, if you think about it, right, and it is similar to the building in which we are sitting, right? This is a family-owned media system, right? The Seton family owns Manhattan Broadcasting, which includes K-Man and the 4 FMs, and they also own the Manhattan Mercury, the newspaper here in town. And we've had guests, we've had Ned Seton on, the publisher, and the conversation is basically this notion of family-owned systems, whether they're media systems, whether they're banks, whether they're supermarkets, whatever they are, right, is something worth hanging on to in Kansas.
Right, and I would say people always talk about like incentives, like entrepreneurs, family-owned businesses. They don't ask for incentives. Corporations ask for incentives. And so, and as you can check any statistic you want, but over 90%, I'm very safe in saying 90, some people say 90% of all new businesses in Kansas are started by small businesses.
Right, and these folks are not going to the city commission and asking for an IRB or a property tax break.
Right.
Because they just don't have that sort of, that's not even on their radar screen, I would
Right.
suspect.
They're mostly thinking about, what they need to do to be successful.
When you think in this work that you do, after you get the communities on board and you move forward with them, do they help identify individuals or systems in the community that could use your services, or is it, which comes first, I guess, chicken and egg?
No, the community. The communities are critical to everything we do. And the reason that Network Kansas gets opportunities that we do is because we can distribute resources quickly because we have these 75 outlets already in place across the state.
You've done some work here, locally, here in Manhattan, right? We probably should point that out. I don't want this to be a homerism component, but let's just make people aware of some of the work that Network, they probably don't have a clue that Network Kansas has a connection to some of the work that you're doing here locally.
Yeah, we K-State reached out to us, been 2 years now, I think, on the K-State 105 initiative, and we partnered with them in a variety of ways. In fact, we run our youth entrepreneurship state competition through here. We also did the Blueprint for Growth that is really exciting. I think that I don't remember the number of communities that were selected, but over $1 million is going into communities to build entrepreneurial systems.
K-State 105, we had Jessica Nadd on here a week or two ago. She's the director of that, and their whole notion is to take K-State out statewide into 105 counties, which makes sense when you think about research and extension and the infrastructure, human and financial, that they already have at that level. So it makes sense that you guys would get involved in that sort of work. When you look at the communities in which you work, how do you describe them? Are you across the board in terms of demographics and populations?
Oh yeah, our smallest entrepreneurship community is a population of 400, but we also do work in the large urban centers. We have, we work here. In fact, every urban center we work in. But I would say the way I describe communities is resilient. They're just resilient and they are focused on intentionally helping small businesses in their community.
Our guest is Steve Radley. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Network Kansas. They're a system that is based in the Wichita area, and we're visiting with him about all the good work they do in communities across Kansas. Steve, when you think about the rural communities, you said your smallest one is one of 400. That's where?
Bird City, Kansas.
Bird City, Kansas, up in northwest Kansas.
Yeah,
absolutely.
northwest
So you go
Kansas,
from Bird City to Johnson County to Wichita
Cherokee
to Manhattan.
County.
You're all over the place. And you know this, right? The population demographic trends of western Kansas are not going up. Right, they've been declining for a century, and there's ongoing conversation about what that needs to look like, and maybe more recently than in the last 10 or 15 years. So those numbers have become troubling for a lot of communities. What sort of things does Network Kansas bring out there that if you weren't doing it would simply not exist?
Well, I think that the capital systems and actually the entrepreneurship programs, most every one of our entrepreneurship programs come from ideas from communities. But we also work with accelerators across the state that will, I'll give you an example. There's an organization called Nexus in Wichita, and they did a program called Community Health and Vibrancy, and worked with, and the communities they worked with were across the state. I would say, too, that the reason small business is so important is because, as you know, even across the nation now, unemployment rates are low. They've always been low in rural areas of the state. And so the best way to grow a business, you can't pop in a business and find 200 employees. So growing those businesses incrementally that are businesses that started there is the best way to grow your economy.
I'll make an assumption that those businesses they run the gamut, right? Give us a feel for what actually they are. What goods and services do they provide? Do they make?
There's manufacturing. In fact, manufacturing businesses. There's one in Emporia called Green Dot Holdings that actually does bioplastics. And a great example of how I was in Emporia a couple weeks ago, and the Fab Lab there was talking about the things that they were producing to help Green Dot Bioplastics. So it showed the combination and intersection between Casey Woods and Main Street, Kansas, and a bioplastics company that has plants in Onega, has offices in Johnson County as well.
Steve Radley is our guest. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Network Kansas, and we're visiting with him today here on Within Reason about the good work they do across the state. Steve, when you think about working in Bird City, Kansas, population 400, and you think about working in a Johnson County suburb or Manhattan or Emporia, are there things all those communities, the people there, have in common?
You know, it's a great question. So we held for 2 or 3 years, we held these what we called growing entrepreneurial communities at the Kansas City Fed. And the second year, one of the things that we noticed was that there was some connection between urban core and rural areas in accessing resources, that they had difficulty doing that. And I think that piece of it resonated with us. And so urban communities and rural communities have a lot of similarities that they don't realize.
Steve Radley is our guest. He is the CEO of Network Kansas. Steve, when you go to these communities, or when you go to a community where you're actually don't know who they are, they don't know who you are. How do you explain what you are? Do you say, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you? Or what do you lead with? How do you people understand what you do?
No, we don't lead that with that. We lead with our partner in that community. Because I can promise you there's not a community in the state of Kansas that we don't have one partner that could introduce us. And most of the time, we do have coaches across the state that work with the communities. And so we don't ever go in that. We always go in with our partners.
And I would suspect the best one is where you go in where you are invited.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Steve Radley's our guest. Since the launch of Network Kansas 19 years ago, they have created a resource partner network of more than 600 partners. They have launched loan and venture funds that have provided investments of more than $65 million to more than 1,500 businesses. Steve Radley is the CEO. We'll continue our conversation with him as Within Reason continues here on News Radio KMAN. Stay with us.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
One day, I got a call from a woman looking to schedule an appointment with an oncology provider for her mom. She told me her mom would be moving in with her during the treatment and that she was concerned her home wasn't set up for the care she needed. So I contacted our social work team. They started working on getting everything she needed, like a bed, supplies, and home equipment. And that all happened before her first appointment. When that appointment came, not only was the oncologist there, but so were other supportive care team members, including social services, who made sure the care provided at our cancer center and the daughter's home were the absolute best they could be. As a nurse navigator, I know there isn't any substitute for keeping families together during their toughest times. So knowing this daughter would be right at her mom's side to hold her hand or just be with her, it's why I always say how we provide care is just as important as the care itself.
The University of Kansas Cancer Center. Why would you go anywhere else?
New year, new career. Meadowlark, a local not-for-profit retirement community in Manhattan, Kansas, is hiring passionate individuals like you to join our healthcare team. Discover exciting career options at Meadowlark, where your skills and compassion make a real difference in the lives of our residents. To learn more or apply, visit careers.meadowlark.org or call 785-323-3898. Start your journey with us. New year, new career at Meadowlark.
Manhattan Broadcasting Company is an equal opportunity employer. In order to widely publicize our job opportunities and outreach programs and organizations that regularly distribute information to job seekers or refers candidates to employers, please contact us about our employment contact list to receive the most current information about station vacancies. For more information or to be added to the list, please contact Manhattan Broadcasting Company at 785-776-1350 or visit us at 2414 Casement Road in Manhattan, Kansas, or email frontdesk@1350kman.com.
The Ramsey Show.
So I am 20 years old, straight out of high school. I moved to Phoenix, Arizona to start my own business selling furniture.
What does selling furniture look like?
So I go around picking it up, clean it up, take really good pictures and sell it. I'll probably do about $100,000 this year net.
Wow.
some of you are standing around with your finger in your ear. And then you got a 20-year-old with a high school education that's making $100,000 flipping used furniture.
He's laughing all the way to the bank.
Financial advice for everyone. The Ramsey Show, weekdays from 10 to 1 on News Radio, KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Network Kansas was established as a component of the Kansas Economic Growth Act of 2004 to further entrepreneurship and small business growth as a priority for economic and community development here in the state of Kansas. We are visiting today with Network Kansas CEO Steve Radley. Steve, 2004 is a whole generation ago now.
Yes, it is.
Right when you
for
think
me
of,
too.
Well, I was going to say, right? You were I think 4 years old when you started. Is that correct?
Right.
So help us understand just the politics of this, right? That's you have to go to the legislature. This is a Kansas State legislative created system.
Yeah.
But you're not chasing dollars every year in an appropriations budget bottom line the way K-State might be, as an example.
Right.
Fair? Help us understand what that looks like.
I think that was really the genius of what they created. And when I'm talking to other states, and I've talked to a lot of states who want a Network Kansas in their state, is that our primary funding comes from an entrepreneurship tax credit. It's $2 million a year. It's never gone up, never changed in 20 years. And so we can raise money through this entrepreneurship tax credit to dedicate to the resources for loans, for entrepreneurship programs, for our operation.
So that tax credit, help us understand exactly where that comes from.
So it's just, it's part of the state treasury budget. And so basically we raise money, people get a 75% tax credit, and we turn that in at the end of each calendar year.
And you're no stranger to Topeka, right? You're up there quite frequently. Just you have to build the relationships to make people understand what you're doing and that you're held accountable for these funds and this work. So give us a sense. I mean, if you think about it, 2004, Kathleen Sebelius was governor, right? So you have survived Kathleen Sebelius, Mark Parkinson, Sam Brownback, Jeff Collier, Laura Kelly, right? 5 governors, and gosh knows how many legislative leadership positions, right? And yet you're still going strong, right? There's a lot of systems that have the connection with Topeka that cannot say that. What do you attribute that?
Well, I think the primary reason is the way we do things. We're not a state. We don't act like a state organization. We're a statewide organization, but the work goes through. We push everything to the local level. So we're not, when you have 75 communities making their own decisions on loans, driving their own pieces, it just makes a difference. And I've never met a legislator, a governor, a secretary of commerce who doesn't want to find ways to support small businesses. And if you can do that with the people in those communities, it makes a huge difference.
And you think about the work that you do, right? It is very unique just in terms of the even in the economic development world, right? In that global sort of system where you are trying to create wealth and create jobs for communities, the work that you do is somewhat unique. Have other states tried to do what you have done?
No, it's my dream someday to have another state. I've talked to 4 or 5 of them and we've actually worked in a few states where they've kind of started down this path, but there are no states doing this like Network Kansas does now. I hope in the future there will be.
Steve Radley is our guest. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Network Kansas, which works very closely with partner communities across the state to help entrepreneurials and startups get going and to create wealth and to add jobs. Just an unsolicited word of advice. When you think about the work that you'd like to do for the future with these other states, and you describe that as semi-retirement maybe, take it from a guy who this is supposed to be semi-retirement, haven't really gotten there yet. So make sure that you define it very succinctly before you get too far down that path. Help us understand, Steve, just a little bit about this, the businesses that are created in the local communities, the partnerships. They run the gamut. We talked about that earlier. Give us a feel for sort of the emotional ownership that a community will take in that. There has to be some pride involved in this work.
Yeah, and by the way, it's one of the reasons why to be honest with you, it's a lot smarter to let the local communities make decisions. They go to church with the people, they shop at their stores, they may work for them that on these leadership teams. And so these businesses are very entrenched in the community. I mean, we've funded, a cement company in Johnson County to the McCarty dairies in western Kansas, and all of these businesses are connected to the people in the community.
You've done a lot of recently, I think, some daycare, some child care related work. That's a key issue across the state.
Yes, it's a key issue across the nation. It's like a fundamental crisis, and we've worked with the Kansas Health Foundation and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas on this as well.
You're probably familiar with the Child Care Accelerator concept that's underway here in Manhattan, right? I'm not sure if you guys have worked with them specifically, but the concept is some really smart people got in a room and said, how can we deal with this challenge in Manhattan? And the idea is to sort of similar to what you do, right? It's like get people in a room, figure out how you can help set them up in a daycare business and use it as incubator, accelerator to get that stuff going. All kinds of really, really creative minds and community partners and stakeholders involved with that. That's the key in this kind of work, it sounds like?
It's really cross-sector collaboration. It's the only way that things like that can get solved.
When you have these conversations in the communities, whether you're in Bird City, whether you're in Manhattan talking to K-State, whether you're in Emporia, right? What is it? Can you generalize and say these are the things that we need to get from you, Steve Radley, and Network Kansas, apart from just the money?
Well, our mission statement talks about valuable relationships, expert knowledge, experience, but I don't look at it as that Network Kansas. It's the community, and when we need to solve issues, when Network Kansas is trying to figure out, I'm going to hop in the car and drive to Garden City and talk to Lana Duvall. I'm going to go to Joanne Knight in Dodge City. I mean, these people that have been working in these communities, they're the experts, not us. They're the ones driving it. Our job is to coalesce resources to help them solve the issues.
When you think about the coalescing of resources, right, that involves clearly financial resources. Yep. I would assume, I'm going to use this word, you may take issue with it, soft skill building, right? There's individuals that sit around a table that may not know how to build a relationship, may not understand that the value of stakeholder relationships. Is that the kind of thing that you can help with?
It is. Although I don't know, we were talking about this earlier, and I'm trying to remember what I said about that.
I think you said I don't describe them as soft skills.
Yeah, they're not. They're more critical to the entrepreneur to be able to communicate in a way that solves those issues.
Fair enough. When you think about the future, right? When you think about the success that you've had up until now, right, and you are not subject to the political whims that other entities that might be related to budget. When you dream and think about what this might look like in 5 or 10 years, what goes through your mind?
Well, I think there's a new emerging area that I always say. If State Small Business Credit Initiative from the Treasury hadn't come along, we'd have been working on it more, and that's the area of impact investing. And so the idea of impact investing is where, and we've worked with several foundations on it, where like a Hutchinson Community Foundation says, we're going to take part of the money that we send to New York and invest, and we're going to invest it locally. Topeka Community Foundation has done the same thing, Wichita Community Foundation. And so they're actually making loans. Like in Topeka, we made a loan to a daycare called Scent. Topeka did, and we helped them by administering the loan.
And so these are community-driven philanthropies, right?
Yes.
Community foundations, and I'm going to just make an assumption, and I want you again to check me on the assumption. They're sitting on a pot of money, right? And they can do whatever they want to with that pot of money. They can put park benches in City Park and put somebody's name on it, or they can do something creative like this. But generally speaking, do those community foundations send their money to a money manager somewhere?
Yes, and so that's the key. I heard a foundation say no more parks and posies. But what it really means is, so you're rather than saying the new generation of wealth that's coming along isn't going to set 95% of their money to the side. They want to invest more of that money. I don't know if you've heard Mark Zuckerberg's foundation. It's an LLC. So he's investing 100% of that money. And so what these community foundations are saying, let's just take 5%. Imagine if every community foundation took 5% of the money that they're going to send to New York and invested it locally. That's a lot of money.
That's a significant amount of money that could be brought to bear, especially in the western part of the state where those populations are declining, right?
Right.
Fair enough. Our guest is Steve Radley. He is the CEO of Network Kansas. It is backed by more than 500 partners statewide. Network Kansas promotes an entrepreneurial environment by connecting entrepreneurs and small business owners with the expertise, education, and economic resources they need in order to succeed. We will continue our conversation with Steve Radley as Within Reason continues here on News Radio KMAN. The Trust Company is an independent, locally owned wealth management and investment company founded right here in Manhattan in 1992. Building and nurturing relationships that very often last decades is the Trust Company's key to designing and managing a plan to meet your short and long-term life goals. If they do their job, the relationship will become one of mutual trust, and they hope to make a friend. The Trust Company, locally owned, client-focused. Their only allegiance is to you. Visit thetrustco.com.
At Stormontville Health, our patients are our neighbors and our communities are home.
We invest in your health and our community by bringing high-quality healthcare closer to home. From our Wamego Clinic to our new campus in Manhattan and the Flint Hills Hospital in Junction City. Our partnerships with organizations like the Mayo Clinic and the Children's Miracle Network bring top-notch expertise to our region. We take pride in local collaboration to stay connected to our communities. Visit stormontvale.org.
Stormontville Health, high-quality care closer to home.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now save 50% on the new Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Limited time. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
It's time to tax like a champ with help from your local pros at H&R Block. Block guarantees 100% accuracy and your max refund or your money back. Plus, you'll always know the price of your tax prep before you begin.
Stop at an H&R Block at 634 Tuttle Creek Boulevard or 347 Anderson in Manhattan or at 1705 Commercial Circle in Wamego.
All tax situations are different. Not everyone gets a refund. Limitations apply. See hrblock.com/guarantees.
Join the original influencers, influencing for over 60 years, and discover how you can turn your passion for media and sales into a rewarding career. Manhattan Broadcasting is looking for creative, hardworking individuals who have a passion for helping businesses grow through traditional and digital marketing platforms. Qualified candidates should be creative, great at building relationships, and most of all, success-driven. Apply now at the top-rated media company, Manhattan Broadcasting. Send your resume to jobs@manhattanbroadcasting.com. Our client success is your success.
The Ramsey Show.
The problem is the stupid banks will loan you so much money that they put you in bankruptcy because they don't have an off button. They'll just loan you money. Mm-hmm. You know, you can go get a credit card, you can go on a trip you can't afford, you can go down here and get a car. You know, there's actually people out there walking around that still think that if the bank will loan it to you, it means you can pay it. The same people that think if you have checks left in your checkbook, there must be money in the account.
Mm-hmm.
Same people.
Life and money advice. The Ramsey Show. Weekdays from 10 to 1 on News Radio KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
That promo we just heard, Steve, Life and Money Advice, The Ramsey Show. That's kind of what you do every day, right? Steve Radley is our guest. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Network Kansas. It's a system that works with communities across the state to help entrepreneurs get started and to get startup businesses up and running. All manner of human resources, financial resources are brought to bear in that effort. They work in communities that range from Burge City in northwest Kansas to Johnson County suburbs, Wichita, Lawrence, right here in Manhattan as well. Steve, when you think about the work that you do, what distinguishes the work that Network Kansas does from what other states do in this realm?
Well, we've had a lot of, because of the federal programs that we're running, we've had a lot of conversations with national organizations. And I always like to ask them this question. And the question is, what does true empowerment mean? If you're empowering a community, what does it really mean? And in the Network Kansas definition of empowerment, and it always kind of gets, I always like to feed this to the national groups, is that we import decision making. And quite frankly, even the organizations that work on, that are very missional oriented, they still they'll still take the decision making on a loan, to Chicago or to New York or somewhere else, and we actually import that decision making on specific loan programs. We import decision making on what they want to do to help the entrepreneurs in their community.
And that importing of decision making, I'll make another assumption that's what they want to do to begin with anyway.
It's really what democracy was built on. Right. We've just forgotten it,
Fair enough.
And I think that that's why I think that's what made Network Kansas unique. When we started the Entrepreneurship Community Partnership, we said we wanted to put our money where our mouth was, and so we said, you make the decisions. Now we still write the check, but you're making the decision.
Steve Radley is our guest. He's the CEO of Network Kansas. Steve, what do you like best about this work?
Just all of the partners we work with. And, I've never found an on-the-ground partner that isn't passionate wanting to do things for the businesses and their communities, and they just continue to press and grind to do it.
I suspect that when people hear Network Kansas is going to come to town and they get to know you get to know them, then that's nothing but positive. Have you had any folks who say, "No, I don't want to play with you"?
We had early on, when the Entrepreneurship Community Partnership first started, there was skeptics. But some of the skeptics, I still remember Northwest Kansas, Randy Harabi, I can say
Brooks County.
Randy's in Hill City.
There's another Harabi.
And it took me 2 years to get him to try our loan program. And once he tried it, he said, that's the easiest program I've ever worked. And he's one of our largest lenders now.
Fair enough.
So,
Steve Radley's our guest. He's the CEO of Network Kansas. We're talking with him about all the things they're involved with and the work that they do across the state. So when you think about where we are right now in Kansas economically, where we are as a country and as a society politically, right, and just culturally, what are there things that keep you up at night? Are there things that you are concerned about in terms of how you're going to be able to succeed in continuing to do this work?
I'll be honest with you, and maybe it's the entrepreneur in me, but I'm more hopeful because I think we built a system in Kansas. We built a collaborative system in Kansas, and it's not just Network Kansas. It's all of the organizations across Kansas. We built a system to build sustainable resources. Like these programs aren't going to disappear. The one we're working on right now, the $40 million loan program, that's going to be around long after I'm gone. And so I'm hopeful about those things and the systems that we have. I think we're built to last, even through difficult times.
When you think about the work that you do and the financial resources that you're able to access and working with these community partners, absent your work, absent Network Kansas's intervention, would those systems still be able to get there, maybe just take them longer, or they just perhaps would not be able to access those resources at all?
That's a great question, and it's a hard question to answer. But I will say this. The system we built where partners make decisions, partners drive activity, partners do that. It'd be much more fragmented because we can, like I said, we have a coach in Southeast Kansas. They got a great idea there. It gets all across the state, and so that system, it's a distributed system that is also networked, and so those two things together make it more resilient.
We're running out of time, but I need to ask you this. This will be our last question for Steve Radley. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Network Kansas. They're involved with partnerships in communities across the state, helping to work with entrepreneurs to create wealth, to create jobs, to grow businesses. So when you this all comes down to relationships, right? Everything you do,
yep.
Everything all of us do, it all comes down to the relationship that I have with Steve Radley. You and I met in 2008, right? I'm fortunate, you're fortunate to have lived long enough and had enough experience to learn these skills, how to build these relationships and to do this sort of work. If you don't have those skills, what advice do you have for people trying to succeed?
I would say connect locally. Make sure that you connect to those local resources. If you get confused and don't know which ones, call us, 877-521-8600 or info@networkkansas.com. But it really does. It's one connection may not go the way you want, but just keep making those connections because you learn from that.
Fair enough. Steve Radley has been our guest. Steve, thanks for showing up today. We appreciate your willingness to come on and talk about the system that you're involved with and the work that you do.
And I appreciate the wonderful weather you brought.
You know, the vernal equinox is 31 days away. Not that we're counting, right? But I get up this morning and I see 15 below, and I think Key West looks awfully good about this time of year, right? But it's also why we love Kansas, because literally Tuesday, 63 degrees, right? So we can just hang in there. Thanks again. A pleasure to be able to communicate with Steve Radley. I mentioned off the top that he and I are friends and that we met in 2008 as part of a guinea pig cohort with the Kansas Leadership Center when they were test driving their adaptive versus technical leadership skills. I don't know about you, Steve, but I use that stuff every day.
Me too. That's what Network Kansas is built on.
Fair enough. Within Reason is designed specifically to dig deeper into community conversations and societal trends. Our goal is to help connect the dots that can link one part of a specific conversation with another, to help link one set of ideas with perhaps a divergent set of ideas, to allow listeners to think deeper and longer and more critically about all of it. We think that's an important attribute that we need in our community, in our state, in our nation, and in our society. We're grateful that you are with us today. You can find us as a podcast if you've been in and out of the live broadcast. We'll be posted on the K-Man website. We're also available on YouTube, on Apple and Spotify. We're working out the bugs on the YouTube. I was upside down the other day, but that has now been repaired, and I am right side up. Our guests are always right side up, which is incredibly helpful. We've been on the air since the middle of October. Right off the bat, early on, you'll recall we had on each of your 5 elected Manhattan City Commissioners, one at a time. It is time for round 2 of that round with your municipal policymakers. Tomorrow, we will be joined by Manhattan City Commissioner Jamie Minton, who made news the first time she was on our program by indicating that she intends to seek re-election this year. The local elections are literally months away. We'll cover the horizon with Jamie Minton of Community Concerns. I have no doubt we will talk about the never-ending, ongoing, chronic discussion about indoor water. Next week, we'll be joined by Blade Mages, who is doing all kinds of creative things with Wareham Hall downtown. We'll also talk with Anna Burson, Riley County Appraiser, and Josh Brewer, Habitat for Humanity of the Northern Flint Hills. My name's Mike Matson. Thanks for listening. This is News Radio, KMAN. The program is Within Reason. Stay warm. Have a great day.
The Ramsey Show's coming up next on News Radio KMAN, Manhattan, Kansas.